First, tail. The polar bear is regarded as one of the most aggressive and deadly bear species, followed by the grizzly bear, despite both bears being quite hazardous. They are likewise intriguing marine creatures that live in the Arctic, but they have a major issue that might potentially have an impact on Americans: changes in the climate. And today, despite their dire predicament due to climate change, people, particularly animal activists, are doing their best to take various steps to save the gorgeous species of polar bears. We cannot ignore the fact that polar bear assaults are also on the increase, since these animals have been moving around more and ultimately will end up largely in residential areas where humans live, or have interacted with individuals who only wanted to learn how their own personal circumstances are impacted by the state of the world. The most spine-chilling and horrifying polar bear tales have been collected in this video. Laura Stone had, until to this point, always been attracted to the charm of the Earth's rough terrains. The Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, located in the Arctic Ocean, had become Laura's most recent exploration destination. As a geologist, she spent her days navigating rough terrains and exploring the secrets hidden within layers of stone. The isolated town where Laura lived was renowned for its breathtaking polar bear population. These magnificent animals may often be seen far away as they explore the frozen tundra. I'm fascinated by their flexibility and resiliency. Countless hours had been spent by Laura watching them in their natural environment. However, a cruel set of events on a fateful day undermine her respect for these animals. With her tools and a rucksack full of supplies, Laura started off on her usual walk on a clear morning. The sun's beams embraced the thick blanket of snow, illuminating the Arctic scene with an ethereal radiance. Laura was lost in contemplation, wondering what secrets lay under the surface just waiting to be discovered. Unbeknownst to Laura, a juvenile polar bear had veered off its typical course and was now approaching the settlement. The bear discovered the aroma of human presence because it was inquisitive and inexperienced. It was intrigued and followed the fragrance until it saw Laura. As Laura became lost in her task, a shudder suddenly raced down her spine. She took a quick look around and felt her pulse skip a beat as she met the enormous white beast's gaze. She was startled when she discovered she was standing next to a baby polar bear. Its muscles are tensed, and its curiosity is becoming hostile. Laura tried to quietly back away, trying not to startle the bear, but instinct took over, and she was rebuffed by a roar, a signal that the bear was not yet ready to cede its new territory. As she became aware of how serious her situation was, panic erupted. As the polar bear approached, Laura's legs started to shake. The bear was unable to hold back as she walked slowly away from it, and it roared immediately. Despite not being fully grown, the bear easily knocked Laura to the ground before racing for the geologist. The bear came on top of her and began to assault her by scratching her all over from her head down to her torso with its sharp claws, but it was so heavy that she felt her entire body being squeezed tight by pressure as soon as it happened. As Laura struggled to battle the polar bear with her own two hands, she yelled in agony and failed. The geologist cried for assistance while covered in blood on her body and face, knowing that if no one intervened to rescue her, she would perish at the hands of the bear's continued mauling. Laura's thoughts started to fill with sadness when a local man called Odin showed there. Odin was a skilled hunter who had gained a thorough awareness of the wildlife of the Arctic. Dev quickly assessed the situation after hearing the ruckus and came up with a strategy to rescue Laura from the polar bear's jaws. Odin saw the baby bear's hostile expression and realized that quick action was required. He pulled a flare pistol from his rucksack and blasted it into the sky. With the skill of a seasoned hunter, the polar bear was temporarily startled by the tremendous noise that resonated through the air. Despite her wounds and bruises, Laura was able to carefully crawl away from the bear once it stopped assaulting her. Taking advantage of the bear's brief misunderstanding, Odin tried to establish a barrier by placing himself between Laura and the animal. He yelled a stern order that cut through the icy quiet. The bear paused as it wasn't sure how to respond. Odin was aware of the urgency of the situation. He summoned all of his might and let off a roar from the deeps to rule the little bear. The polar bear turned and withdrew into the wide white terrain, vanishing from view, overwhelmed by the gravity of the circumstance. Laura is still alive, albeit she is rattled, attempted to stand up but reportedly fell on the floor. Relief, astonishment, and anguish were all mixed together in her body as she trembled. Odin rushed over to her side, lending a firm hand and a comforting presence. He shielded her from the bitter cold by wrapping her in warm blankets. Together, they went back to the town's perimeter for Laura's injuries, first assistance, and transportation to a local hospital. The close-knit neighborhood was rocked by news of Laura's experience with the polar bear. which spread like wildfire. The villagers were grateful for Odin's unselfish courage and unshakable dedication to the welfare of their fellow citizens in the wake of the catastrophe. Laura's enthusiasm for geology was unwavering. Her future activities, however, were accompanied with a newfound respect and caution, which increased her vigilance and awareness of her surroundings if she had any investigating to do. She was traumatized by the incident, but it also gave her strength. Each day as it went by. Second tale. The following tale concerns a tour guide working in the deserted Soviet coal mining community of Pyramiden. Tourists came to this hamlet because of its dark and frightening atmosphere and their desire to have a paranormal encounter. However, this tour guide encountered something more horrifying than a ghost or other supernatural being. Johan was an experienced Norwegian tour guide who had spent the most of his life traveling across the wild and isolated regions of his own country. He had a spirit of adventure and a steadfast appreciation for the great outdoors. He developed a strong reputation as a guide and specialized in taking groups to some of Norway's most alluring and unusual locations because of his enthusiasm for showing off the country's natural beauty to others. Johan set off on an excursion one summer to Pyramiden, a defunct Soviet coal mining settlement on the far-flung Svalbard archipelago. Midden, which was deep within the Arctic Circle pyramid, had been abandoned for many years. Its once vibrant village has been reduced to a frozen ghost town. It was a hauntingly gorgeous location, and Johan thought it would be the ideal spot to highlight Norway's extensive history and stunning surroundings. Johan had organized a bunch of daring travelers who were all ready to experience Pyramidens enigmatic attraction. They started their adventure navigating dangerous terrain and a harsh Arctic temperature. Everyone was having a good time. As they got closer to their goal, you could feel their enthusiasm. Little did they realize as Johan led the company through the run, down streets of Pyramiden, a sudden and bone cold, that danger lurked in the freezing tundra. Through the deserted structures, roar could be heard. Johan's pulse quickened as he identified the noises coming from a large polar bear that had been startled out of his sleep by their presence. Johan instantly appraised the situation as fear seized his heart. He gave the visitors the order to hold their positions since they had few alternatives and little time to waste, ensuring that they maintained as much composure and calm as possible. The polar bear came at the party with a fury that could only come from the wild, its gigantic size dwarfing everything in its path. Johan understood that fighting back was their last hope of surviving. He summoned every ounce of strength and bravery he had, drawing on his years of outdoor experience. He approached the polar bear head on, attempting to dissuade it from attacking by using a flare rifle and a tiny pocket knife. The confrontation was harsh and cruel. The enormous might of the polar bear was unrivaled. The creature's claws tore through Johan's armor, leaving behind deep gashes and drew a lot of blood. With one misstep, the courageously defending Johan might have been defeated by the unrelenting predator. The polar bear immediately knocked Johan to the ground before beginning to eat his head, face, and shoulders. Although they were afraid, the visitors were determined to devise a plan to divert and dissuade the polar bear from continuing to assault Johan. As he attempted to raise his arms, Johan yelled and punched the polar bear square in the face. As the polar bear snarled and began to scratch Johan's face, it became more aggressive, making the visitors more alarmed as Johan screamed in agony. Shouts and screams burst through the icy silence just when all hope seemed gone. Refusing to watch helplessly, the visitors banded together and created a unified front while arming themselves with anything they could find. They hurled pebbles and other homemade weapons at the polar bear, distracting it and affording Johan a little minute of peace before rising to his feet. Despite the damage the polar bear strike had done to him, Johan used this chance to summon the remainder of his energy. With excitement coursing through his body, he deftly manipulated his knife, locating its target and struck the bear precisely. The injured animal realized its chances were no longer favorable, retreated into the huge white countryside, vanishing. The terrifying incident had left Johan with serious wounds. His body was damaged and beaten. As soon as possible, the visitors banded together and used their first aid knowledge to stop the bleeding and keep him stable until assistance could come. They broadcast a distress signal in case of emergency, informing the authorities of the situation and giving away their precise position. Rescue personnel arrived on the scene quickly and made their way through the difficult terrain to the group. Johan received emergency medical care while being taken to safety, saving his life. He had survived a confrontation that would be seared in his mind for the rest of his life, but his wounds were severe, and the path to recovery would be long. Story 3. Motivated by a lifetime love of animals, Adriana had always understood that ensuring their well-being was her vocation. Her ambition of becoming a veterinarian came true after years of unshakable commitment and hard struggle. She had a deep-seated desire to devote her life to this cause. She had no idea, however, that her route would soon cross with a polar bear, which would change her life forever. Adriana had been employed by a prominent Dutch conservation organization that specialized in safeguarding our Arctic species. She felt blessed to work closely with these magnificent animals in what was a difficult but fulfilling profession. One chilly day, she learned that one of the local polar bears, Aurora, had given birth to 2 lovely cubs that were well-built and full of energy. Adriana moved toward the cage housing Aurora and her pups. She made sure the gates were properly shut and informed her co-workers of her location, among other safety precautions. Adriana was in awe at what she saw as she entered the cage. The cubs' white fur, which blended seamlessly with the snow-covered ground, were cuddled next to their mother. Adriana inspected the cubs' well-being and made sure they were flourishing as she started her normal examination with a warm grin. She had no idea that a succession of awful things were going to happen. Adriana was concentrating on the cubs when she saw that Aurora's cage had a broken lock. The mother bear took advantage of the situation to escape. Adriana and Aurora were now separated from the exit by Aurora in a matter of seconds. Adriana was in danger, and while she was preventing her escape, she felt a rush of panic. Panic overcame her as she frantically looked for a means to defend herself, since she was aware that polar bears were strong animals who were swift and aggressive. She struggled with the cage door and grabbed for her tranquilizer rifle, but it dropped to the ground. That Adriana was weak. A loud roar from Aurora reverberated around the cage. Adriana's spine was broken when the bear's enormous paw hit the ground. Aurora made a quick, violent move toward her. Adriana's instincts took over, and with her razor-sharp fangs and ready trike claws, she fought back with all her strength. While doing so, she left behind deep gashes and forceful bites that threatened to break her bones as she utilized every ounce of her strength and training to fight off the enormous predator claws at her flesh. The air was filled with the noises of their battle, a gruesome orchestra of roars, growls, and anguished screams. Adriana persisted despite the huge odds against her. She struggled with unyielding tenacity, hoping against hope that someone would help. Finally, the noise woke him up. Her coworkers hurried over to the cage. They were able to overpower Aurora using tranquilizer guns, leaving her bruised, bleeding, and temporarily unconscious. Adriana was sent right away to the hospital. She had somehow survived the vicious assault. Despite her serious wounds, the medical staff worked valiantly to treat both her physical and mental wounds. Adriana's tribulations were well known, inspiring compassion and support from people all across the globe. Her experience provided as a sobering reminder of the dangers that individuals who committed their life to animal protection must deal with. People were moved by her strength and fortitude and appreciative for her altruistic commitment to save these endangered species. Adriana achieved a miraculous recovery after many months of diligent therapy, despite being emotionally and physically wounded. She wouldn't allow fear to rule. Future, backed by even more tenacity. She kept up her support for wildlife preservation and conservation while working as a veterinarian. Fourth story. Abigail and Daniel had always been daring people who were always looking for new adventures to share. They set off on an exciting camping trip to Torn Gut Mountains National Park as their 5th wedding anniversary drew near. Situated in the rugged, isolated region of northern Canada, they had no idea how unexpectedly their voyage would soon turn out to be. The Torn Gut Mountains rose tall among the gorgeous terrain, and excitement filled the air as they put up their comfortable tent. Their magnificent peaks were completely blanketed in snow. The pair was in a good mood as they admired the unspoiled beauty all around them. On the morning of their anniversary, Daniel surprised Abigail with a sumptuous breakfast set as they sat close to their tent and enjoyed the quiet of the nature around them. The pair had a touching talk, remembering their trip and being thankful for their relationship and their shared experiences. But the fates had other ideas for their party. A medium-sized polar bear suddenly appeared from behind a nearby boulder, its immense size and commanding presence. Daniel and Abigail were startled, and they both froze in terror. The bear approached them, and they neglected to eat their breakfast. Daniel shouted and waved his arms in an effort to frighten the bear away, but the bear was driven by instinct and hunger and leapt for Abigail. Daniel hardly had time to respond since everything occurred so quickly. The moment the polar bear's jaws closed on Abigail's arm, she screamed with a piercing scream. Her veins were coarsened with anxiety as the agony was severe. Daniel took immediate action after experiencing an adrenaline rush. He bravely and desperately battled to free Abigail from the bear's grip's hold on the injured and scared. Abigail was able to resist by drawing power from inside. She pounded and kicked the animal while using all of her resolve to stay alive. Despite the battle, Daniel was able to seize a nearby camping axe and strike the bear in the head with a heavy blow. The bear temporarily loosened its hold on Abigail after being stunned by the hit, and she seized the chance. Daniel and Abigail struggled to their feet and sprinted in the direction of a group of trees. As they reached safety, their hearts raced as they prayed against hope that the bear would leave them. The pair stayed buried, gasping for air and trembling for hours. The surrounding woods seemed unnaturally still, as if it were holding its breath. They eventually carefully came out of concealment, their bodies hurting and their clothing ripped. They instantly understood that Abigail's wounds required rapid medical treatment and that they needed to use their survival abilities. They arrived at an emergency satellite phone they had brought just in case. Following a terrifying wait, a rescue squad showed there and flew Abigail to the closest hospital. Abigail miraculously survived the assault, but her road to recovery would be difficult and drawn out. To restore movement in her crippled arm, she endured many operations and underwent lengthy treatment. Daniel was at her side the whole time, providing unfailing love and support. Their lives were profoundly altered by the tragedy at the Tourette Mountains National Park. They learned from it how fleeting life is and how crucial it is to appreciate each and every moment. As they overcame the difficulties together, embracing the gift of life and their mutual love for each other, their relationship as a couple became stronger. Story No. 5. Kate has always been a risk taker who sought out unusual and risky travel encounters. His sights were focused this time on the alluring wilderness of Long Eye, a little settlement in the Svalbard archipelago that is renowned for its breathtaking scenery and the chance to see gorgeous polar bears. He had no idea that the course of his travel would suddenly change, putting his fortitude to the test and highlighting the power of human kindness. Cade set up camp close to the icy fjords with his loyal and perceptive dog Remy, anxious to see the marvels that awaited him. Although Long Yan was known for having a large population of polar bears, Cade had taken the essential safety measures. He had obtained a permit, gone through a thorough safety orientation, and armed himself with bear spray and a shotgun to be ready for any confrontations that could arise. Cade put up his tent and found peace in the surrounding calm as the sun sunk below the horizon, throwing an unreal light over the frozen terrain. At his side, Remy snuggled up, ever vigilant and cautious. They had no idea that danger was waiting beyond their makeshift shelter of canvas. Ka was awakened from his nap by a loud rumbling. He opened the tent zipper in the early dawn and looked into the shadows. Then he saw a polar bear in the distance. Its enormous shape stood out against the moonlit snow. As he became aware that he was in a life or death circumstance, fear overcame him and his heart began to beat. Cade fumbled with his bear spray as he grasped out of instinct. The polar bear attacked his thunder in his anxiety. Before he could respond, the earth underneath him began to shake. With a sweep of its razor-sharp claws, the bear slashed at him, sending the boy reeling backward. His body shook in agony. When Remy saw his friend was in trouble, he acted quickly. He charged the polar bear with unshakable courage, barking fiercely to frighten it away. Cade had ample time to restore his balance. The polar bear focused on Remy as he swatted at him with a huge paw. At the moment when all hope seemed lost, a person appeared out of the shadows. Despite how much suffering the dog was in, it remained steadfast. Briggs, a different traveler who had been camped close by, was there to see the horrific event. With excitement pumping through his veins, Briggs knew he had to act quickly. He pulled out a flare pistol from his rucksack and shot it into the air, producing a loud bang and a flash of brilliant light. The sudden disruption briefly surprised the polar bear, who briefly paused. Briggs pounced on the chance, grabbed Remy and Ka, and the three of them fled for safety. The bear, which was imprisoned within the improvised fortification, chased them as they hurried toward Briggs' house in search of safety in his St. Sturdier shelter. The polar bears circled their camp as they gazed in wonder and terror, its powerful presence, an ongoing reminder of the danger. After nearly escaping, Briggs reinforced the camp using survival skills, assuring them safety until help could arrive. Days later, Cade, Remy, and Briggs got together and discussed their terrifying experience. Without Briggs' bravery and fast thinking, Cade would not have made it through the terrible maw, and for that, he was forever thankful. Through their shared experience, they developed a kinship that was strengthened by hardship, eternally tying their lives together.